Guess what? Last year, the York Daily Record, an evening to unravel York County's history, filled Windridge Farms barn to the rafters. And tonight at 7 p.m., our panel and several others will give a follow-up presentation again at Windridge Farms. And we are fortunate to have a preview of the presentation be given by the three of York's best-known historians and bloggers. A few weeks ago, we heard the amazing success story of York's S. Morgan Smith, a prime example of how York County's best contributors have been forgotten by time. The same could be said by some of the county's worst, its villains. Retro York's June Lloyd, Steve Smith, and Jim McClure will give a preview of some of the stories about York County's heroes and villains. And I'll ask them to come up while I'm going through this. They will also bring back a sample from last year's theme, York County's Great Controversies. June Lloyd, who's coming up right here, is York County History Center's librarian emerita, who has blogged for Universal York for more than a decade. Stephen H. Smith, in the middle, is a retired engineer and writes for the popular York Past blog. And our good friend Jim McClure, who's taking the seat now, is editor of the York Daily Record Sunday News and edits and curates the Retro York website, the Facebook group, and the newsletter. All three, plus Scott Mingus and Joan Concilio, write for Retro York, a York Daily Record initiative to bring together stories, photos, and videos about York County history to help people discover the people and places of the county's rich past. These past moments, both big pivotal events and the everyday life of local residents, are ripe for exploration because they help bind us as a community together. The last portion of the Rotary presentation will be for Stump the Historians, something that our club is so uniquely prepared for, as we have many people that have long histories with the county, and our panel invites Rotarians to ask questions to bring up local history that can stump our panel. I will moderate that last portion, and I will ask that the questions be short. I know that's also hard for us. Few small speeches would not be encouraged in order to give our respondents or panelists the maximum amount of time. Fellow Rotarians and guests, please warmly welcome June, Steve, and Jim.
It's great to be here at the country club here, and it makes me think a little bit about the Yorktown. And there's a recent prompt on Facebook asking, what was your most memorable Yorktown hotel experience? And I replied to that. Part of my reply went like this: speaking to York Rotary for the first time about 15 years ago. And that was it's a big deal and to speak here, and it's quite a moment to address a group with this long history, prestige, size, and sagacity. I've always wanted to use that word, sagacity. This seemed like a good place to do it. And, I'm glad your phones are not out, so you don't have to look that up. But it is a compliment. I'm now back for maybe the fourth time, but the butterflies still flutter for exactly the same reason. This is an important group in the community, an important group in getting things done in the community. And I think that this history initiative that we're going to talk about is really useful, and I think hopefully you'll come away with some ideas about how to use local history in the business life and in all parts of your life. Today we, this is really a passion for the YDR. It's a passion for my colleagues up here. It's a passion for the two folks here from the YDR, Kim Strong, not Scott, Kim Strong, and Scott Fisher, who helped run some of these history initiatives that we do. Yeah, we packaged up 5 websites or blog sites plus history stories from 4 central Pennsylvania newsrooms into this initiative called Retro York. And this is a preview. This is, you won't, if you're coming tonight, you'll see new stuff. I figured there's 3/8 of this program tonight that we're doing here. Plus we're going to have the Red Line High School students there tonight who will be asking us tough questions. So we're going to need to bone up on a Red Line history here tonight to be ready for those. So we're giving a preview here today. I'd first like to explore why the study of local history, York County history, is important. First off, it's fun. And we need to make it more fun and even more fun so we can reach newer and younger audiences with this history.
There's pleasure and satisfaction in learning new things. That's another reason. In honing your sense of discovery, you need a closer. Do I need to start over?
Just the last
Actually, I'm
row.
almost done. You didn't know that. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Al broke it. I'll go ahead and try to project. Is that okay? So, until we get a new one. There's pleasure and satisfaction in learning new things, in honing your sense of discovery, of someone guiding you to the edge of discovery. I think that's important. It's useful. If you know your town as a businessman, then you have more credibility with your customers and your business has a better chance of being successful. There's lessons from the past. Just think of a recent Jim Lloyd piece in which she put forth the near-miss demolition of the York County Courthouse #3 in the 1950s. How can we, I'm not sure if you knew that, the courthouse that we know and love almost came down in the 1950s for a structure that looks like Dauphin County Courthouse. You know what that looks like. How can we avoid such...
Take it out and hold it to your mouth.
Can you hear this? Okay.
Closer,
I've been asking this, I thought I might,
Jim.
might go over that bit.
closer, right there.
All the way.
So the question about that Yorktown piece that June did is, when you study something like that, it happened in the 1950s, where that beautiful domed courthouse almost came down. The question is, how can we avoid near misses of this type in the future? And history can be a glue that holds together communities at a time when things seem to be falling apart. A sense of local history helps repair the frayed or threadbare community fabric. I know I spent a lot of my day looking at problems in journalists and situations in other communities that we're part of, all the way from Boston to around the eastern United States. And when I get home in the evening, I will sometimes go down to a local historical society because it's such a wonderful, you get a wonderful sense of place when you do that. In fact, I've been, see Lauren Crow there, I've been down to the Glen Rock Historical Society so often they give me an honorary membership, which is something because that means it's a free membership. And they don't give free memberships out very much down in Glen Rock. It's great for the community and economic development. I've written recently that we fret too much about our bad news going out around the world. Okay, let me give you, the last point I was making is I want that it's great for community economic development. I've written recently that we spread too much about our bad news going out around the world on the web. I want to spend a second on that last point. Let me give you some numbers. In the 10 plus years our 5 Retro York bloggers have been in business, we posted 9,000 to 10,000 stories about York County history. 9,000 to 10,000 stories. Most of them available today when you search on Google. In the month of October, on our Retro York platforms, about 600,000 pages were accessed around the world of local history. And that doesn't count video views. And this involved York County history, you know, from readers around the world. The audience, the individual people that read those stories around the world was about 30,000 people. They're called unique visitors. So remember those numbers, 600,000 and an audience of 30,000. Okay, and recently we had one of these unfortunate instances of racial comments made by a leader in another town near York. And the numbers there were 32,000 pages, 600,000 versus 32,000, and 30,000 in an audience of 24,000. So that's 30,000 for history, 24,000 for readers on that particular story, for all the stories. So you can see that we might not like stories like those bad news stories going out, but there's a flood of very interesting and let's say either neutral or positive stories going out just from the local history area alone. So you see where I'm going with this. It's up to us to avert our gazes here in York County from our belly buttons, you know, as we look at as we think about news that goes out from our community. As I've said, knowing and writing about local history is great for community economic development. Some of these retro York history stories are about heroes, others about villains, as we'll hear today. But by and large, York County's history is one about achievement and accomplishment, a story of overcoming obstacles and challenges. In York County, we're simply too hard on ourselves. We believe we come up a poor second to Lancaster and the like. And we beat ourselves up because our occasional bad news stories go out. The question is, why don't stories about our achievements stick with us? There are 9,000 or 10,000 of those out there, as I pointed out earlier, just on the local history front. So one of our Retro York goals is to make York County's history accessible to people of all ages, including students and millennials. There's a stat out there that by 2020, video traffic will represent 82% of all consumer internet traffic. Video traffic would be 82% of all consumer internet traffic. So today's presentation will feature 2 videos that explain and explore history. And today's presentation will give you that preview that we've been talking about. And June, Steve, and I will give brief presentations here of heroes and villains as a preview as well. And then we'll open this to the Stump the Historian question and answer time. And please be nice to us, but we'll try to handle whatever you come up with. And then we'll end with a video telling York County's history in a slightly different way through the eyes of Lafayette. So in the spirit of making history accessible, we are now unveiling a new video brought forth and developed by millennials on the York Daily Record staff to try to teach history and infuse humor and fun into its humor, infuse humor and fun into its humor and fun-impaired host. You'll see what I mean in a second. Hi, I'm Jim McClure. I tell stories for a living, both as a journalist and as a history writer. It's a heck of a lot of fun to do this. When I'm not at work, I'm immersed in a book about the people and events that shaped York County. Our local history is filled with many compelling stories. It's easy to get pulled in. Back in the 1730s, rich farmland carved by the Crites, Cadorus, and Conewago Creeks made York County an attractive place for settlers. It was the 5th county created in Pennsylvania, the first west of the Susquehanna River. During the Revolutionary War, York served as the capital of the United States for 9 months. The Continental Congress was pushed out of Philadelphia by the British and used York County's Susquehanna River as a natural safety barrier. Here in York, Congress adopted the Articles of Confederation, America's first framework of government. Another boundary, the Mason-Dixon line that makes up York County's southern border, marks a place where north meets south. That's exactly what happened during the Civil War. Confederate soldiers marched towards Harrisburg and clashed with Union forces in the streets of Hanover and Wrightsville. The enemy occupied York for 2 days before moving west to the Battle of Gettysburg. The 1920s would bring more people across the Mason-Dixon line, but this time as people seeking positions at the many industries operating in York County. World War II would again spotlight York nationally with the York Plan. It was an effort to combine machines and manpower across the community to defend America. The men and women of York's skilled manufacturers turned out weapons, refrigeration equipment, and other defense stuff that were then easily transported to Baltimore, Philadelphia, and other ports. History has marched through York County for hundreds of years. Today it's a crossroads of commerce and transportation and history. The question for you and me, how will history remember York County of the early 21st century? Okay. Yeah, well, and now up next will be Steve Smith, who will do a hero.
Adam F. Geesey was one of the countless unsung heroes from York County history whose contributions have been overlooked in bettering our community. I stumbled upon Adam's contribution while researching my series of posts on the first electric generating station in York County. Quoting from George Prowl's 1907 history of York County, quote, "It is a matter of record and fairly a part of the history of the city that the Electric Light Company of York owed its birth and present success to Mr. Adam F. Giese, who clung it through the early years of its struggles, never for a moment doubting the ultimate success which came to it," end quote. I used this 1907 published history as a starting point and filled in the details by examining public documents, deeds, estate records, and the like, plus newspaper articles during Adams' lifetime. In 1880, Thomas Edison was issued the United States patent for the first practical light bulb. The following year, Edison established the first centrally located electric generating station in New York City. Outside of New York, in 1882, saw the first Edison electric generating station up and running in a small town. That was out in Wisconsin. Now, widespread electrification was still decades away. Still, in York, Adam Giese viewed electricity as the solution to a problem he was having in New York. So in 1883, he was the prime mover in organizing the Edison Electric Light Company of York. When Adam was 44 years old, the station became operational, and that was in 1885. It was located along West Gas Avenue, next to Pershing Avenue, near the Cadorus Creek. Adam was still living when the last electric generating station expansion reached West Philadelphia Street in 1917. These are the buildings that will be repurposed as the next York County History Center, coming in about 3 years probably. If it was only Adams' association with the origins of the electric generating station, I might have selected another unsung hero. However, the array of Adams' other varied achievements compelled me to select him. Adam was a one-room school teacher, and then he became a Civil War veteran. After the war, he became a merchant. He owned the Eagle Hotel on the square in Dallastown. He came to York. He was a merchant here in York. He was a 6-year owner of the Gazette. He was also a public servant. After being elected as treasurer of York County, upon being sworn in, there was a debt of $9 million in terms of today's money. And he was kind of a proactive treasurer. He enacted a plan that wiped out the debt and lowered taxes. So when his successor had to leave office, everybody said, "We got to get Adam back." So he was actually a 2-term treasurer, being appointed the 2nd term. In 1879, Adam Giese purchased a group of lots in Spring Garden Township and built a residence, which is now numbered 633 South George Street. At that time, that was part of Spring Garden Township. And that residence is on the northeast corner of East Cottage Place and South George Street. Adam planned on selling the other Cottage Place lots that he owned along that stretch of land, but he had a problem. The gas company would not sell gas to him except at an exorbitant price because it was outside the city limits. That particular lot, those lots would not become part of the city until 1886. Adam Giese viewed electricity as a solution to the gas company monopoly for lighting those particular residents. So that was his reason for establishing the Edison Electric Light Company in 1883. 1885, the electric generating station opened, and it actually benefited all of York County because that was the only sole centrally located electric generating station in all of York County until 1904, when the York Haven hydroelectric plant opened. Also, Adam Giese was actively involved in the expansion of trolley lines. In the 1880s, he was president of the York County Electric Railway Company. They were basically buying up rights-of-way to get the trolleys out into the countryside. In 1898, the frugal nature of Adam Giese came forth as the founder of the York Steam Heating Company. This company used the waste exhaust heat from the electric generating station to provide cheap steam heat to downtown York. So those are quite a few of the reasons why I chose Adam Giese as my unsung hero.
Okay, I'm here with my sample villain. And my villain is progress, in quotes. I'm not anti-development, and I know you can't save everything. But when we look back at some of the buildings that we have lost, some of the sites, and their human connections too, and also the ones that were threatened and thankfully saved. For instance, one of the first ones of note to disappear was the 1754 courthouse. It was torn down in 1841. And this was the courthouse in which Continental Congress adopted the Articles of Confederation, which held us together over the Revolutionary War. This is where we received word of the assistance from France, without which we probably would have lost the Revolutionary War. But it is gone, along with so many other buildings. For instance, the York County Academy. And that was there from the 18th century up well into the 20th century. And there are all kinds of connections there. One is Thaddeus Stevens. Thaddeus Stevens left his native New England to come to the York County Academy as a teacher. While he was here, he decided to study law under a couple local attorneys. He passed the bar, and from there he went into politics. And as we know, Thaddeus Stevens was one of the instigators that kept, after Lincoln, to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, as well as when he was in Congress to pass the 13th Amendment. So that's history may have been changed if Thaddeus Stevens wouldn't have come to the York County Academy, another building that's now a parking lot, another site that's now a parking lot. Also there, the huge York Collegiate Institute and the very impressive York City Market with its tower based on the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. Those two wonderful Dempwolf buildings came down in the 50s and 60s when a lot of our buildings did come down and a lot more were threatened. And I'm finding out more about all these as we go along. As you know, the 50s and 60s were when we had the big cars. Everyone was in love with cars. You could get in your car and go everywhere. So most of the things actually that were threatened or torn down either became gas stations or parking lots. These include things like the Plow Tavern and Gates House. There was parking proposed there. Also the Strand and Capitol Theaters. The whole southeast quadrant of the square. Now we have the nicely restored Hartman Building, Newswanger Building, and there were plans to tear that down, build a few offices, and make the rest of it parking. Even the southwestern quadrant of the square, the Colonial Hotel and the Rupp Schmidt Building. But as Jim alluded to, I did a recent blog post, and I'm going to be doing my next column, on how we almost lost the Dome Courthouse, the beautiful Dome Courthouse, in the 1950s. Actually, in 1953, architect Frederick Dempwolf had his plan to build a monolithic Dauphin County type square granite courthouse to replace the domed courthouse that, ironically, his father, the noted architect J.A. Dempwolf, had built just 50 years before that. It was passed by the majority of county commissioners, but it was saved actually by the judges. And you can read more about this in my column, but the judges had to approve it. They had to be, even though the county commissioners did, they already had, and the judges said it was too expensive. So, and I think the judges, they also did lean to not tearing the courthouse down, but it was a good excuse anyway that it was too expensive. And there's still some in question. Hybla, the Wright Mifflin Mansion near Wrightsville, the Hoke House at Spring Grove, the Modern Air Motel and the adjoining Weiser Bloomingdale Mansion in East York. And then there are buildings that are sitting there empty, and you kind of wonder, well, what is going to happen to them? You know, it's just kind of quiet till all of a sudden someone says, oh, this is going to be torn down. I don't know what's going on right now with the post office on South George Street, but we just have heard recently that the even older post office at the corner of Beaver and Philadelphia Street is going to be renovated and preserved, so that's great. So, and as Jim alluded to also, I mean, these aren't just buildings. These are what give us that sense of place. It's what makes York County York County. So let's hope that as we evaluate all these cases, as time goes by, that we take everything into consideration, including what they mean to us as a community. Thank you.
And now I have another hero, and I would say Adam Giese. I believe it was Adam Giese that made the York Gazette a daily newspaper in 1886. So he might be a villain or a hero, depending on what you think about that. My hero is Eugene B. Bubb, a little-known person, but he was the first to die, thought to be the first to die in Pearl Harbor. Maybe the only York County to die in Pearl Harbor. About 570 military men from York County died in World War II, and the first known came 75 years ago today in the Japanese attack. News of the death of York County serviceman Eugene B. Bubb reached York within days of the December 7th attack. No details, just that he had died. His father, a World War II vet, had died earlier in 1941. Eugene Bubb, 15-year-old, his 15-year-old sister Fern received the telegram, and she later recalled, "We didn't have the radio on that Sunday. We were visiting relatives in Gettysburg. By Thursday we hadn't heard anything, so I thought he would be all right." There's more to Eugene Bubb's story, which we'll get to in a minute. If Eugene Bubb was the first to die, who was the last to die? Let's look at that for a second. Well, in the European theater in World War II, Charles E. Williams was one of the last to fall. He died in Italy only weeks before VE Day ended fighting in May 1945. He's one of 6 brothers to serve in the war. The other 5 sons came home. In the Pacific, yeoman 3rd class Jack T. Yaples certainly was one of the last to die. Here's his story according to a paper prepared some years ago by Byron Lecates. I don't know if Byron's here today, but this is the value of great scholarship out there that you can pull from and make public as we're doing today. On July, Jack Yaples was aboard the heavy cruiser USS Indianapolis. The ship was moving on to its next assignment in the South Pacific after dropping off elements of the atomic bomb that would later fall in Hiroshima. A Japanese torpedo struck the ship in the open sea and went down in 12 minutes, so quickly that it couldn't send out an SOS. About 300 men died in the strike, and another 600 succumbed to exposure and shark attacks. In the 5 days they struggled for survival until help arrived. The remaining 300 were rescued after the Navy finally discovered that a major ship had gone down. It was a major embarrassment for the Navy, and news of the incident was released on VJ Day. Kind of interesting release of the news in conjunction with VJ Day. Initially, that was initially obscured because America was celebrating the Long War's end. It's not known whether Yaples died after the torpedo blast or in the water. Jack Yaples' name was etched into the plaques or tablets bearing the honor roll of World War II dead on the York County Courthouse's facade. That's the courthouse that's still standing because it wasn't torn down in the 1950s. We return to Eugene Bubb's story. When the tablets of the World War II dead originally were placed on the courthouse facade, Eugene Bubb's name was omitted. Its shiny lettering was later added, along with 3 others who died for their country. His name, brighter than others that were part of the original molding, is out of alphabetical order, but at least stands out today, honoring the man who was the first to die in York County in World War II. So, ready for the questions? Okay, what's that? Okay, great. Okay, we can take 2 questions. Any questions out there that June and Stephen can answer? Oh, yes.
I have what would appear to be a very simplistic question, which is, who was the first president of the United States? And the reason I've raised this is very obvious, the answer to most people. But I understand there's some studies going on that actually, as the first articles referred to the United States of America, that our first president probably would have been Henry Lee. But I'm interested if you have any comments on that whole item.
Yeah, I'll start on
Repeat the
that.
question, Jim.
Okay, the question was, who was the first president of the United States? It may not have been George Washington, according to recent discourses out there. I'll just start on this by saying that, yeah, the Articles of Confederation were adopted here in New York, and Henry Lawrence was president here when they were adopted. They were then sent out to the states for ratification. 4 years later, they were ratified in 1781. And it's often thought 1 or 2 of the presidents at the time it was ratified is actually the first president of the United States under the Articles of Confederation, not the U.S. Constitution. June, anything else to be said about that?
You're probably alluding to whether York was actually the first capital, and I have done some research on that, and I did a column about a year ago. And in my opinion, and well, as this gentleman showed, it all depends how you look at it. You know, was it under this or was it under that? But in my opinion, no. York was a very important capital, and I think that's what we should look at. Like I said, in my opinion, it actually was already called the United States of America, not only in the documents, but also printed on the money before that. What people didn't realize is that designation as the first capital really came out of a public relations campaign by the local Colonial Tourist Bureau in 1961. And it just kind of snowballed. And there's plenty of documentation at the York County History Center in the files, correspondence and everything. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. So I think with both of those things, it depends, it depends what angle you're looking at it. So you can make arguments in various ways, and everyone's entitled to their opinion.
One more, yes.
Can you tell us when the Susquehannock warriors, or Indians rather, were massacred, and what impact that had on the settlement of York County?
Anybody want to handle that?
Oh, she asked about the Susquehannocks being massacred, and actually, and what that effect that had in York County. And I'd done a column on the Susquehanna settlement several years ago, so I'll see what I can remember. Actually, the last 2 settlements were down in Long Level, and they were gone, I believe, by 1670. They're now both preserved. One's the Bird Lee Park property, the other is the Oscar Lee Park property. And that actually, they went from here and then they went down to Maryland, and some of them came back as the Conestoga Indians. And they were over across the river in the Conestoga area, and that's where they were rounded up, put into jail, and the Paxton boys came down from Harrisburg, and that's where the massacre was. So that actually was after there were any resident Native Americans in York County.
And you probably heard that massacre happened over in Lancaster County, not York County, not number 2. And really, York County had little American Indian warfare and strife. As June said, they were largely gone by the time the settlement started in the 1730s. There's one celebrated case involving Mary Jemison that happened down in the western part of York County, where she and her family were hauled away, and she became known as the White Woman of the Genesee up in New York State. But we were fortunate; we had very little English settler American Indian strife. One more, keep going.
Can you speak briefly about the designer of Central Park in New York City, Frederick Olmsted, who designed a plan for the Codorus waterfront, and what we in York County did after that?
Oh, yeah, I know you know, June. June will handle this one. This is a heck of a good story.
Okay. I'm sorry. As I often say, to be a librarian and archivist like I am, you don't have to know everything. You just need to know where to look it up. But I actually did a column this year on that, and it was Frederick Olmsted Jr. was the one that did the plan for the Doris Creek. And as far as what happened to it, it's one of those many plans that have been filed away over the years.
Steve, you have any? Any more? Any other questions?
Time's up.
We're done. Okay. Okay, thanks. Yeah, this is the video we're going to see. It's 2 minutes, and it really does show a different way of talking and telling history stories.
How does a mid-sized town an hour north of Baltimore honor a French aristocrat and an officer for smoothly stepping into York to raise a wine glass, a toast that saved George Washington's spine? What? Yo, turns out we figured just the thing. It's a fragile doll with a smiling head upon a spring. He's smooth and suave and swift to find solution. Now he's getting cross from our own York Revolution. Lafayette! No joke to the favorite funny freshman that we love the most. And they said it was prey, but what the hey, admit they would give it away. It's a cheers, it appears a mere art in the city of peers. I go to games for more fun, and hope the rest go more runs and hits. And dudes who throw the pitch past the bow, and then we go and get his free breadsticks and calls to hit the wall. It's tall, and I know which dog I'd rather haul, but y'all collect them all. Stand tall out on the street. My name's on the marquee, and if they ask it who that statue, then you can say it's me, 'cause I'm glass full of ball with my name of the club. Lafayette. Never been in a debate, bring my truck down on General King's. Lafayette. Around there, through the farms, my shit back to mom on the side of the pond. One more head. Time to get one, because my rhyme is all done.
I'm not sure what it says.